Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Andrew Figtree. We warmly welcome the family of Private Leslie Albert Ewin, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors, as well as students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Cherrybrook Public School, and from Victoria, Afferton Public School from Ballarat. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you, students. You may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Leslie Albert Ewin. Leslie Ewin was born on the 13th of June 1920 to the large family of Kenneth William and Elizabeth Martha Ewin of the Sydney suburb of Lewisham. Known as Les, when he was 9 years old, he and a friend were involved in a billy cart accident. After colliding with a car, both boys were thrown from the cart. Leslie suffered concussion and abrasions, and his friend was admitted to hospital with a fractured skull. After Australia's involvement in the Second World War was announced, Leslie was anxious to enlist, but he wasn't yet 21. He needed parental consent. He exhorted his mother, who was reluctant. He went so far as telling her that he would enlist under a false name if she did not agree. In June 1941, Ewin did enlist under his own name, but he lied about his age to do so, overstating it by 2 years. Ewin was marched into General Details Depot in Tamworth and sent to an infantry training brigade before being transferred to a signals training depot. He later joined an armoured training regiment and then trained for work in an ordnance workshop. On the 10th of January 1942, he embarked for Singapore via Batavia, arriving a few weeks later to join the 2nd of the 10th Ordnance Field Workshop. The large batch of reinforcements of which he formed a part had been hastily assembled and apparently included many incompetently trained personnel. Leslie claimed that he'd been on a 6-month instrument mechanic course, but he had only completed 3 months of training before he sailed. After the surrender of Singapore to the Japanese on the 15th of February, Leslie spent some time in hospital. About 3 weeks later, he was sent to Changi prisoner of war camp, where he was reunited with his older brother Russell, who was with the 8th Australian Division Signals. When orders came from the Japanese to assemble a work party of 3,000 for an unknown overseas destination, the brothers decided that the chances of one surviving were greater if they remained separate. Leslie embarked with A-Force on the 14th of May 1942. Arriving in Burma around a fortnight later, the group was employed in airfield construction. After the airfields were completed, in September, A-Force went by ship to Tanbai Yuzat to work on the Burma-Thailand Railway. Living and working conditions were horrific. The prisoners of war found themselves at the bottom of a social system that was harsh, punitive, fanatical, and often deadly. Maltreatment, sickness, and starvation were rife. After the railway was completed in October, Ewin and the other surviving members of A-Force were to be sent to Japan. Their journey began in overcrowded rail trucks, travelling from Bangkok to Phnom Penh, then by riverboat along the Mekong River to Saigon and on to Cape St. Jacques, where they boarded a transport ship. When the transport ship refused to take them for fear of being attacked, they were sent to Phnom Penh, where they waited 3 days for a train before travelling to Singapore. On 6th of September 1944, Ewin and other survivors of the Burma-Thailand Railway left Singapore aboard 2 ships that were part of a convoy bound for Japan. The Kashidoku Maru was carrying 900 British prisoners of war. Ewin was on the Raikoyu Maru, which held about 1,300 Australian and British prisoners, crowded into one forward hold, normally capable of accommodating 187 steerage passengers. Neither ship was marked with a Red Cross or any indication that they were carrying prisoners. Early on the 12th of September 1944, the convoy was attacked by American submarines and the ships were sunk. The Raikoyu Maru remained afloat for 12 hours, allowing the prisoners ample time to escape. The Japanese crew was picked up by Japanese destroyers and the prisoners took over the abandoned lifeboats and went among the rafts and wreckage, picking up their comrades. The lifeboats separated. One group was later picked up by the Japanese destroyers. The other group was not seen again. Leslie was not among the survivors. He was 24 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among more than 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Leslie Albert Ewin, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrubber Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We ask that members of the Australian American Young Leadership Dialogue Group please remain in the commemorative area and await further instruction from staff. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.